The clinic was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every footstep echo a little too loudly against the sterile white tiles. I had been waiting for what felt like hours, staring at the faded posters on the wall, posters that promised health and safety, yet made me feel uneasy in ways I couldn't explain. The receptionist glanced up from her phone, barely acknowledging me, and I shifted in my seat, clutching my purse a little tighter. That's when I noticed him. The doctor, Dr. Langston, moving quickly down the hallway, his lab coat flapping behind him like a shadow. He looked at me for just a moment that stretched too long, and then he was gone. My appointment was called, and I followed the nurse into the examination room, the smell of antiseptic strong and stifling. I remember sitting on that cold metal table, the thin paper sheet crinkling beneath me, and trying to focus on anything besides the unease coiling in my stomach. When the doctor finally came in, he carried himself with a nervous energy that immediately made me suspicious. His eyes flicked to the door several times before settling on mine. I thought it was just nerves, maybe too much caffeine or a long day, but when he leaned in to speak, lowering his voice, I knew something was off. "Miss Harper," he said, his tone urgent yet hesitant. "There's something you need to know. You can't wait." I blinked at him, confused. I don't understand. About what?" He glanced toward the door again, then quickly scribbled something on a small slip of paper. He folded it, and, in a gesture so subtle I almost missed it, slid it into the side of my bag. "Take this," he whispered, "and leave as soon as you can. Trust me, run from your family now." I stared at him, frozen, my mind refusing to process the words. Run from my family? What was he talking about? I wanted to laugh at the absurdity, but something in his eyes, the sheer terror, made me stop. That night when I got home, I found the note again. I unfolded it carefully, the thin paper trembling in my fingers. Run from your family now. And for the first time in my life, I realized that a stranger had just saved me. My name is Celeste Harper, and I never thought my life would come to this point, standing in a dimly lit kitchen, heart hammering, gripping a note that could have very well been the difference between life and death. I was 29 years old, a daughter, a sister, a woman with dreams and fears like everyone else, but I never imagined that the people I called family could be the ones plotting my end. I know how that sounds, maybe even a little unbelievable, but if you had seen what I saw, if you had felt what I felt, you wouldn't question it for a second. It started slowly, the subtle shifts that I didn't notice at first. The way my mother would brush past me in the hallway, her hands lingering a second too long on my shoulder. The way my brother's eyes would follow me in ways that made my stomach turn. Little things that at the time seemed like quirks, like family drama. But behind those smiles and arguments were secrets, dark, dangerous secrets that I had never even dreamed existed. The note felt heavy in my hand, as though it carried the weight of all the warnings I had ignored throughout my life. I sat there for hours, staring at it, trying to understand, trying to convince myself that I was overreacting. But something in my gut, that instinct we all have but rarely trust, screamed at me that this was real. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake listening for sounds, imagining shadows, every creak of the house setting my heart racing. By morning, I knew I had to act. I packed a small bag, clothes, toiletries, my savings in cash hidden in an old envelope, and most importantly, the note. I didn't have a plan. Not really. All I knew was that I couldn't stay, not even for a second longer than necessary. Every time I looked at my phone, I expected to see a message or a call that would explain everything, but there was nothing, just silence. And silence, I had learned, could be just as terrifying as screams. I left my apartment with the note tucked safely inside my bag, moving quickly, nervously. Every street, every passerby, every honk of a car horn made me jump. I felt like a hunted animal, and in a way, I was. My family had always been my safety net, but now, knowing what I knew, every familiar face could be a threat. The first place I went was a small motel on the outskirts of town. I didn't have friends I could call, no one I trusted fully, and that was part of the terror, the realization that I was utterly alone, with only a cryptic warning and my instincts to guide me. I checked in under a false name, the clerk barely raising her eyebrow, and I collapsed onto the bed, exhaustion and fear intertwining in a way that made it impossible to distinguish where one ended and the other began. As I lay there, the events replayed in my mind. I thought about the doctor's hands, the urgency in his eyes, the way he had looked over his shoulder before sliding the note into my bag. He had risked everything to warn me. Why? How did he know? And more importantly, how much time did I have before whatever he was warning me about came to pass? I didn't have answers, only questions. And questions have a way of keeping you awake. So I did the only thing I could. I tried to piece together a life on my own, step by cautious step, each moment a careful dance between paranoia and hope. The first few days were the hardest. I had to avoid anyone who might recognize me, take routes I never took before, and live in constant fear that someone from my old life would appear, smiling, pretending everything was normal, while plotting something sinister behind my back. Every phone call became a test, every knock at the door a potential threat. And then one night, it happened. The realization hit me like a wave, cold and unrelenting. The doctor hadn't just been warning me about something vague or imagined. He had been saving me from a very real, very dangerous threat. My family, the people I had trusted most, were not who I thought they were. That's when the full scope of my reality hit me. I couldn't go back. Not yet. Not ever. If I did, I wouldn't just be risking my comfort, my safety. My life itself was in danger. And so I ran, truly ran into a new existence, one defined by vigilance, fear, and the desperate, burning hope that I could find a way to reclaim my life on my own terms. The days turned into a blur of caution and quiet panic. I moved from motel to motel, always checking in under a different name, always making sure that nothing in my old life could trace me. Even the simplest things, like buying groceries or filling up my car, felt like tightrope walking. I avoided looking anyone in the eye too long, avoided conversations that might reveal too much. The fear was constant, but beneath it was something else. Something I hadn't expected. A growing sense of clarity. For the first time in my life, I could see the world as it really was, stripped of the comforting lies I had been told my whole life. I learned quickly that my instincts, which I had often ignored, were now my most powerful tool. Every creak, every shadow, every unexpected sound was a signal. I began to notice patterns. When someone followed me, when a car lingered too long at a red light behind me, when a stranger's gaze lingered a second too long. I didn't panic, not immediately. I observed. I calculated. I survived. One evening, I was sitting in a small diner on the edge of town, the kind with flickering neon signs and a smell of fried grease that lingered in your clothes no matter how long you stayed. I had a cup of coffee in front of me, my fingers wrapped around it like it was a lifeline, when I saw a man walk in and glance around. Something about him made my chest tighten. He wore a suit, dark, crisp, almost too clean for this town. But it wasn't the suit that caught my attention. It was the way he moved, the way he scanned the room as if he were looking for someone specific. I considered leaving, but curiosity and instinct warred inside me. He walked past my table, his eyes briefly meeting mine, and I felt it again, that chilling sense of recognition, like my entire life was about to pivot on a single choice. He didn't approach, didn't speak, just kept walking. I left minutes later, heart racing, taking a back route I had memorized, making sure he wasn't following me. That was the first time I realized my family's reach was broader than I had imagined. Whatever secrets they held, they were organized, careful, precise. They had eyes in places I didn't even know could be watched. And the thought of them knowing I was alive, hiding, made my skin crawl. I remembered the doctor's warning again. Run from your family now. It had seemed urgent, almost casual at the same time, like he was trying to protect me without frightening me too much. But now I understood the gravity. He hadn't exaggerated. He had saved me, and I owed him more than I could ever repay. I thought about contacting him, but I didn't know how. I didn't even know if he was safe. The very act of reaching out could have exposed him, endangered him. So I waited, cautiously, keeping my movements minimal, always alert. Sleep was no longer a luxury. It was a dangerous necessity. Each night, I would lie in a dark motel room, the thin walls barely keeping out the sounds of the world, listening to every creak, every hum of the air conditioner, every footstep outside. My mind would replay memories I had tried to forget, the smiles of my family, the small moments of trust I had placed in them, now tainted with suspicion. The woman who trusted too easily was gone. The woman who remained was alert, calculating, vigilant. I began keeping a journal, writing down everything I remembered about my family, everything I suspected, everything that felt off. Little things at first, conversations that didn't add up, gestures that seemed too rehearsed, then larger pieces, things I had brushed aside as paranoia. As I wrote, a pattern emerged. My family wasn't just toxic, they were dangerous. Not reckless, not careless, dangerous. There was planning, there was calculation, there was intent, and the intent was focused squarely on me. One night, I received a call on a burner phone I had bought days earlier. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me answer. A voice, calm and measured, spoke. Celeste Harper, we need to talk. Your family, they're not who you think they are. Meet me at the corner of 5th and Main, midnight. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me not to go. Every fiber of my being told me it was a trap. But something in the voice, something familiar yet unplaceable, made me pause. I couldn't ignore it. I had to know. At midnight, I parked a block away and watched the intersection. The streetlights flickered, the air thick with fog, and every shadow seemed to move with intent. That's when I saw her, a woman, tall, dressed in dark layers that concealed her completely, her face mostly hidden by a hood. She moved with precision, like she knew exactly where she was going. She glanced around once, then locked eyes with me, a gesture that made my heart skip. "Celeste," she said, her voice low, urgent. "I know you're scared. You should be. But you're stronger than you think. The time has come for you to understand the truth about your family." I stepped closer, the cool night air biting at my cheeks. "Who are you? How do you know me?" She said, "I've been watching," almost apologetically. "I've been protecting you, from a distance, since the doctor sent you that note. You don't have much time, and you need to know everything." She handed me a small folder, thick with papers, photographs, and documents I couldn't comprehend all at once. My fingers shook as I flipped through them. Names, addresses, financial records, photographs of people I recognized, my family, doing things I couldn't believe, illegal, dangerous things. And then at the bottom of the folder, a note in handwriting I knew all too well. "Trust no one, not even those you love." It was a lot to take in. My chest tightened, my stomach roiled, and for a moment I thought I might collapse right there on the foggy sidewalk. But something inside me, some stubborn spark, ignited. I realized then that fear could be a weapon, but it could also be a shield. I could be terrified, yes, but I would also survive. And if I survived, I would fight back. The woman spoke again, breaking my spiraling thoughts. "Listen carefully. They will come for you. They always come back. But if you're prepared, if you plan, if you stay vigilant, you can outmaneuver them. You can disappear completely if you need to. You have allies, you have resources, but you have to act now." I nodded, barely able to speak. I wanted to ask 100 questions, demand answers, demand explanations, but I knew there wasn't time. Every second I lingered was a second I risked being found. That night, back in my temporary safe house, I spread the folder across the table and studied it obsessively. I memorized addresses, phone numbers, patterns, people's habits. Every detail could be a lifeline or a trap. The web my family had woven was vast and intricate, but it wasn't flawless. I could see the gaps, the weaknesses, the points where they underestimated me. And that realization gave me hope. Hope was dangerous too, of course. It made you vulnerable. But without it, I would have nothing. No drive, no will, no reason to keep moving forward. Hope became my fuel, fear my map, and determination my weapon. Over the following weeks, I honed my skills. I learned how to move unseen, how to blend into crowds, how to anticipate patterns. I watched my family from a distance when I could, piecing together their routines, their secrets. And with each passing day, the danger became clearer, but so did my resolve. I was no longer the naive daughter, the trusting sister. I was a survivor, and a survivor plans. By the end of part 2, I realized one undeniable truth. The doctor hadn't just saved me that first night. He had ignited a fire in me, a clarity I never had before. And if I could survive this, if I could outsmart them, I would not just escape, but I would reclaim my life on my own terms and make them pay for every lie, every betrayal, every moment they tried to control me. By the time I reached the 3rd week of my disappearance, the world outside my safe houses had become a blur of streets, neon lights, and strangers' faces. I rarely stayed in one place more than a few nights. Each new location a temporary cocoon where I could plan, breathe, and think. But I knew that staying hidden wasn't enough. The longer I ran, the closer my family's shadow followed. They were organized, resourceful, and ruthless. I had no illusions. If I didn't act, they would find me. I spent hours poring over the folder the mysterious woman had given me. Every detail mattered. Every phone number, every address, every pattern. I memorized their schedules, their routines, the places they trusted. I even started making my own network, reaching out to people who had no ties to my family, people who could provide information, help, or protection. Each connection was a lifeline, and each lifeline gave me a little more power. The first breakthrough came unexpectedly. I had tracked my brother to a high-rise downtown. He had been living in secrecy, meeting with unknown associates, and yet his routine was predictable. I watched him from a safe distance, binoculars crossed to my eyes, heart pounding. Every step he took, every turn he made, I cataloged meticulously. I didn't feel fear. Not yet, but a simmering anger. The betrayal of trust, the danger my own blood had represented, fueled me in ways I never imagined. It was the first time I allowed myself to consider confrontation. I didn't want revenge, not in the simplistic sense, but I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted to expose them. I wanted to reclaim my life on my terms and make sure they knew I was no longer a victim. The plan took shape slowly, like a shadow stretching across a wall. I couldn't just confront them head-on. I had to be strategic. I had to use the intelligence I had gained, the resources I had quietly amassed, the small network of allies who trusted me. I chose the night carefully. It was cold, foggy, a night that favored shadows. I parked a block away from my mother's house, a place that had once been home and now felt like a cage. My heart raced. not with fear, but with anticipation. I had rehearsed every step, anticipated every possibility. I was no longer the frightened daughter I had been when I first held that doctor's note. Inside, I found them as expected. My mother, my brother, my father, unaware that I was no longer the naive girl they had thought they could manipulate. I moved quietly, watching, listening. The air was thick with their whispered plotting, the way they spoke about me as if I were not even there. I felt a cold rage, and yet a clear-headed calm that kept me focused. I revealed myself, then, not with screams, not with chaos, but with precision. "Celeste," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the room like glass. They froze. Their eyes widened, confusion, fear, and recognition all colliding at once. My mother tried to speak first, but I held up my hand. "Don't. Save your words. I know everything. Every lie, every secret, every plan, and now it ends." I laid out the evidence systematically, showing what I had discovered: the financial manipulations, the illegal activities, the threats, the betrayals. Each document, each photo, each fact hit them like a physical blow. I watched their faces change, shifting from denial to panic. My mother's composure cracked first, my father's calm veneer faltered, my brother's arrogance dissolved into something I had never seen before: fear. Then came the final blow. I revealed my allies, the network I had built in secret, people they had never suspected, ready to expose every misdeed if I said the word. And I meant it. I wasn't bluffing. I'd spent weeks preparing for this, not just for my survival, but for justice. The room became silent except for the low hum of the heater. I could feel the power shift, a tangible force that had once been theirs, now entirely mine. For the first time, I felt free. Not completely safe, but free. I turned to leave then, not looking back, not needing to. The reckoning had been delivered. They were trapped in the consequences of their own actions, and I had emerged intact, unbroken, and stronger than ever. In the weeks that followed, I rebuilt my life from the ground up. I moved to a city far from my family, a place where no one knew my name. I started over with a new identity, new routines, and a hardened resolve. But I carried with me a sense of triumph, a knowledge that I had faced the ultimate betrayal and survived. I still think of the doctor sometimes, the man who had risked everything to warn me that first night. I will never know exactly why he chose to help me, why he slipped that note into my bag with trembling hands, but I do know this: without him, I might not be here today, telling this story, standing in the light instead of hiding in the shadows. My life is not perfect. The scars remain, etched into my memory and my skin, reminders of the danger I faced and the family I lost. But the greatest scar I have learned is the one that teaches you the truth about yourself. That scar taught me strength, resilience, and vigilance. It taught me to trust my instincts and to value my life above all else. And I survived, not just physically, but wholly, entirely, defiantly. Every day I wake up grateful, alert, and determined to never let anyone, family or stranger, control me again. Because life, as I have learned, can turn in an instant. One moment you are safe, surrounded by the familiar. The next you are running, hiding, fighting for your life. And if you are lucky, like I was, someone appears, a stranger, a guardian, a voice in the dark to hand you a lifeline when you need it most. I am Celeste Harper, and I am alive. Not by luck, not by chance, but because I trusted the warning, embraced the fear, and fought back. And now, no one, not even the people who were supposed to love me, can ever take that away.